Really good afternoon there. Dana Yun here with Preschool Promise. So we're just going to go ahead and wait for a couple minutes here to allow all of our guests to go ahead and come in. So just go ahead and just go to wait a couple seconds. Angela, let us know when to get started.
It looks like we don't have anybody hanging out in the waiting room if we're ready to go.
Alrighty. Well, welcome. Once again, my name is Dana Young. I'm the Preschool Promise Program Manager here for the Early Learning Division. This meeting is for new grantees. So welcome to Preschool Promise. We have a couple of different colleagues here at the division that we're going to go ahead and go around and introduce ourselves. But before we do that, we're going to turn it over to Angela real quick to just go over the agenda real quick and some of our objectives for today. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So happy to see some new faces and have you all join us today. And welcome to everybody who's joining later by watching our YouTube recording. So happy to have you. Our goal for today is just that everyone feels knowledgeable and set up for success in the 2022-2023 program year, that you know where you can try to find more information, who you can contact if you need assistance, and how you can reach out. We do ask that you use the chat for questions. It just kind of helps us manage better, and if there's an opportunity or if we move faster than expected, we'll let people come off mute, but just so that we can try and consolidate and get popular questions answered as fast as possible and have a record of things that we need to come back to. It's really helpful if you put questions in the chat. So we will make sure to introduce everyone today. The team, mostly people that you'll be working with on a regular basis. There's a lot of people that help make Preschool Promise happen, and they can't all join, but we have several with us to introduce to you today. We'll talk about what Preschool Promise is. I'm sure you've learned a good deal about it as you applied, but or if you're a new staff member that's joining today, it's good to have a refresh sometimes. So we'll go over that. Talk about our local partners, the Child Care Resource and Referral and the Early Learning Hubs, and how they support Preschool Promise. Go over inclusionary practice, talk about your why as a grantee and an early learning and care provider. And then we'll get down to some business matters and make sure you feel confident about how to get paid, where to learn about insurance requirements, what reports will be due as a Preschool Promise grantee, how to request a waiver if you need one for some of the Preschool Promise expectations. We'll talk about Preschool Promise's communication strategies, and then we'll send you on your way, hopefully, to go eat dinner and spend time with your families. Really quickly, I know some of the folks here may have attended or may be aware that Hadia Miller, who among many other roles was the president of the Oregon Association for the Early Learning or Early Education of Young Children, pardon me, just a powerhouse in our field, and her celebration of life was today. And there's something very fitting about welcoming all of you and welcoming 2,000 new free childcare slots, early learning and care slots in Oregon on the day of her celebration of life. So cheers to Hadia. And with that, we'll go on to team introductions.
Right, and just a little bit about our team before we go into team introductions. Within the Early Learning Division, we have several different units, and we'll work collaborative and across unit to go for the implementation of Preschool Promise. So we have what we call our program unit. That program unit is really where all of the publicly funded programs are housed. So that's where Oregon Pre-Kindergarten, Relief Nursery, Healthy Families, Preschool Promise, that's where all of that programmatic decisions and yes, implementation is housed. Then you have our grants and ops. That's where all of the fiscal components are overseen. So any of the budgets, the payments, the EGOMs, all of that, all of those processes That's where we collaborate with our grants and ops. And then we have our community systems team. And that is really working with local partners and supports as far as like our early learning hubs and our childcare resource and referral. So we'll go into a little bit more in depth as far as some of the local supports, but that's why you're seeing like different units. So at the ELD, we meet on a weekly basis, daily basis across unit for the implementation of Preschool Promise. So we'll go ahead and just kick it off real quick here with introductions. Meredith, you want to go ahead and then just pass it on to the next colleague?
Hi, everyone. My name is Meredith Fleming. I'm a member of the grants team, so working with all of you on budget payments and all of that. So welcome, everybody. I will pass it to Anthony.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anthony Martirano. Pronouns are he and him. I work closely with Meredith and Dana and the rest of the Preschool Promise team from our grants perspective. So again, welcome and congratulations on being selected to Preschool Promise. Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Connor. I work with the community systems team. I'm a longtime Head Start teacher and coach, and I help coordinate the work to help you make sure that your places are playful places that kids and families are doing cool stuff. I'm in charge of the training and technical assistance system. They couldn't figure out any way to get more words in my title, so that was the limit. I don't know who's next, though. That's one thing I don't know.
Let's pass it on to Crystal.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Crystal Garcia. I'm a program support specialist here at the ELD on the program unit. But I primarily help support with Preschool Promise enrollment. So I work collaboratively with the coordinated enrollment staff at the early learning hubs with Preschool Promise enrollment. And I'll need support from one of my colleagues to pass it on to someone else, please.
Do we have Miriam on the call, Angela?
I don't think so. So I can do a quick intro for Miriam. Miriam is one of our program support specialists, and she's particularly focused on supporting our providers whose preferred language is Spanish. And she is a great help to us, especially as far as like quick turnaround on translations. We provide all of our materials in English and Spanish. So she's a huge support in that way as well.
And Angela, you want to go ahead?
Okay, am I the last one? Hey everyone, I'm Angela Stinson. I am a program analyst, but I specifically work on communication and engagement for Preschool Promise. Prior to this, I have worked as a curriculum director at a culturally specific program in Portland. I was a child protective services caseworker and a childcare licensor before moving into this role. So happy to have you.
Thank you. And once again, you know, this is a cross-unit collaboration with a lot of wealth of experience here in our unit team, you know, across team, whether it's from the licensing background, whether running their own business or running a publicly funded program or providing a lot of coaching and support. So we can go to that next slide. So let's talk about some of the Preschool Promise support. So as a grantee, because of our mixed delivery, because of the different expectations for Preschool Promise grantees, we have an array of supports. You can go ahead and look at them as like state supports here at the ELD. Really, our role is to go ahead and like provide regulatorily like oversight for your grant. Are you meeting your grant deliverables, right? And we're also super responsible to go ahead and like ensure that we're meeting the goals of any legislative goals that we have, working with our grantees on any corrective action plans, taking any action if we hear of any health and safety requirements or opportunities that our grantees may have, and then processing any type of like your payments, taking a look at your enrollment. So it's really just ensuring that you're successful with your grant and that you have the resources needed to be successful with your Preschool Promise grant. At the local level, we have the childcare resource and referral. So for each of the regions, we have a quality specialist and a coach. And Michael's going to go ahead and cover a little bit more in depth about that. And they are really charged with helping our grantees, ensuring that they meet the preschool promise quality requirements. So a lot of the stuff that Michael's talking about, the service to the children, are our little customers in the classrooms happy? Are they being provided with a high quality preschool experience? And then we have our early learning hubs. We know that being a preschool promise grantee is a pretty big, it's a lot of work. So as we do a lot of collaboration with our early learning hubs with what we call preschool promise enrollment. So they are the ones in charge of like processing the eligibility, selection, and placement of families into your program. So the expectation is that our grantees and hubs are working in collaboration to go ahead and get children enrolled. Hubs also play like a big role in community through a lot of different initiatives. One of them is coordinated enrollment, and that's really the alignment of like enrollment and recruitment and community for all publicly funded programs. So if you hear about coordinated enrollment, it's really the big, their big goal of aligning and making it really easier for families to enroll in a publicly funded program. And then they have a very specific role with Preschool Promise in helping our Preschool Promise grantees with the paperwork of determining whether a family is eligible or not to get into the program. There are some grantees that don't, where the hub doesn't do the eligibility, selection, and placement, and that will be for OPK, Oregon Pre-Kindergarten, and Head Start grantees. They do their own eligibility processes, and then our tribal grantees, they have the option whether they want to do their own eligibility processes internally or they go through the hub. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Michael to talk to us a little bit more about the child care resource and referrals.
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, so I help coordinate the training and technical assistance that we've set up to support your success. Today's a short meeting, and so I'll just say a couple things. One is that first bullet there, it says support grantees in implementing preschool promise quality. So there's a position within the CCR&R called the Quality Improvement Specialist, and they consult with program leaders like yourselves to improve quality. And we have specific folks who have that role assigned to Preschool Promise. And that's why we call them the Preschool Promise Quality Improvement Specialist. Imagine if we called them the guacamole cooking. See, that wouldn't be clear. Instead, we call them the Preschool Promise Quality Improvement Specialist, and that's how we help keep things clear. And they'll be reaching out to you soon, because one of their first assignments of the year is to make an agreement with you about training and technical assistance. They're going to talk with you and anybody else on your team that you want about, tell about your program. What's important? What are your goals for your kids and families? What kind of data do you collect about teaching and learning? These are the kinds of questions they'll be talking with you about and completing agreement about. Well, who's going to talk together about how the program's going? How often are we going to meet? Are we going to meet in person, or are we going to be, that kind of conversation is going to happen early. So I really encourage you I encourage you to be on the lookout soon for an email or some skywriting or something from the Quality Improvement Specialist, the Preschool Promise Quality Improvement Specialist. They're going to reach out to you to talk about training and technical assistance agreements. One of the things you'll talk about is coaching. We know that coaching early educators, preschool teachers, is one of the big levers that we have to improve teaching and learning. More than training where people sit and get something for a little bit and then go off and teach, that ongoing job embedded professional learning is what helps improve practice. And we have a goal in our system that all Preschool Promise teachers are receiving coaching. We have coaches in the Child Care Resource and Referral who will work with your teachers. If you've got your own coaches, that's cool. We dig that. I grew up in the 70s, so I think I say things like, that's cool, and we dig that. But one of the things that the Quality Improvement Specialist will ask you about then, oh, you've got your own coaches who work with your teachers? Great. Who are those folks? As you might remember from the Preschool Promise grant, anybody who's coaching Preschool Promise early educators participate in the system that we have set up to make sure that coaches are doing a good job. So that means we have a mentor coach that will meet with them. We have a community of practice for coaches. We're developing tiered coaching certification. So that's a way that coaches can get recognized for doing good stuff. So that's a lot of detail. The main thing is be on the lookout for the Preschool Promise Quality Specialist. They'll reach out with you to make a plan about technical assistance to make your programs even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Angela, do you want to talk a little bit about the hub and then move on to the next slides?
Sure. Let's go back a little bit. Yeah, I think Dana touched on the hub pretty well at the start, but your early learning hub, similar, it's almost like with new folks, I say, imagine a triangle or like 3 pillars. These are 3 different systems holding up Preschool Promise grantees, and the early learning hub's role is really focused around enrollment. So they will be processing paperwork or other, whatever documents needed to determine a family's eligibility, and then touching base with you to get those families enrolled and placed in your program. Something that we didn't touch on yet, but has been in our bulletin if you've been reading it, is around conversion. So if you have families in your program currently that you think or they believe qualify for Preschool Promise slots, they do receive priority. And so we'd love for you to refer them to your hub partner and get them, converted is the ELD phrase that we use into your Preschool Promise slot, so that those families have access to continuing your wonderful program, but without paying. So great news for them. We want to talk a little bit, and I'll try and speed it up a little bit so we get through everything, but just about what Preschool Promise is, because this is a specific program. It's a specific model. It's not ERDC. It's not a startup grant. Although we do include startup funds, it's really its own thing. And so some of the things that Preschool Promise highlights, first of all, we are state funded, high quality preschool program. We specifically serve children who are living at or below the 200% of the federal poverty level. We're mixed delivery, which means another fun ELD term means simply that we partner with different types of programs. We partner with in-home programs, we partner with centers, we partner with school districts to serve children. We believe that doing this offers families a wider array of choices to make a decision that fits the needs of their child and their family better. We are a bilingual program. We're the only public program. I shouldn't say we're the only thing out there at ELD that is in 2 languages, everything, but we're the only public program that offers absolutely everything we put out in both English and Spanish. So every bulletin you read, every meeting we have, every tutorial we produce is going to be in both languages. We are working toward paying early educators as the professionals they are by implementing salary minimums, and we also have target salaries. So you'll want to make sure that you're budgeting for that when you sit down and write that budget report. And then like Michael was talking about, we know that quality programs are ones that produce strong child outcomes. And so we're looking to partner with grantees on this journey of continuous quality improvement so that they can make their programs the best that they can, and that children and families are receiving the benefit of that. So what does participation look like? Participation looks like professional leadership. So that means getting yourself engaged with the SPARK system, which is the state system for kind of recognizing quality. And then ERS assessments, that's something that Preschool Promise implements. It's a third-party observation of your classroom environment. We require professional development. We have staff qualification requirements, minimum salaries and target salaries. Michael, did you want to mention something about ERS or?
I believe that grantees will have the choice between the environmental rating scale and the classroom assessment scoring system.
Awesome. Exciting. It also looks like supportive environments and ambitious instruction, and you'll start recognizing that phrase once you start digging into some Preschool Promise materials. But That means curriculum that aligns with Oregon's early learning and kindergarten guidelines, developmental screening within 45 days of child enrollment, child level assessment that's informing lesson planning, and a strong value of inclusion in every preschool promise classroom. Grantee CCR&Rs and early learning hubs are collaborative and working together to benefit Oregon families. Each role is valued and respected. And then Preschool Promise at the ELD level is doing our best to address the needs of individual communities and be attentive to the advice and the recommendations of local experts. Family engagement. So we try our best to elevate family choice, like we talked about with mixed delivery and making sure that we're offering an array of diverse and dynamic programming that best suits families' needs. We're providing programming that's comparable to public kindergarten that is in our rules. And so it's 900 hours per program year, 6 hours per day and 4 days per week minimum. And then we ask that grantees offer 3 family conferences each year. So that's a lot. Inclusionary practices. I think a big part of why you were chosen as a Preschool Promise grantee is because you're already implementing some amazing inclusionary practices. But some things we always like to highlight at the start is that Preschool Promise classroom environments need to be inclusive of all children, regardless of their ability, their family composition, their culture, their language, or their family income. And we have a strong focus on suspension and expulsion prevention. So you want to pay special attention to that portion of your grant manual. And we really encourage you to connect with CCR&R early if you have concerns about, a particular child, and it feels like you need extra support in the classroom. These are 2 documents that we want to make sure everybody gets familiar with really quickly. The first is the Preschool Promise Grant Manual. So this is kind of, spelling out what you see in your agreement. So looking at the requirements of a Preschool Promise program. The Preschool Promise Quality Requirements Playbook is more a dive into what do quality requirements look like in practice. And that's something that we definitely encourage you to look over and talk with your Preschool Promise coach about when you're creating that TA plan. It's a really valuable resource. Both of those are available on the ELD website, and they're also available on our Preschool Promise SharePoint site, which we'll get to later on. And then we have a poll for everybody to do just to mix things up. But Dana, did you want to talk about this at all before we launch that poll?
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this. We know that, we had a lot of applicants apply for the RFA, and we just wanted to go ahead and take a little bit of time and say, well, let's talk about your why. Why did you apply for Preschool Promise? Was it to fill a need in your community? Was it because you wanted to improve wages? You wanted to invest, improve the quality of your program, grow your business? So I wanted to go ahead and, because that why is really important. Preschool Promise, like I said, it's a lot of work. There's definitely a lot of resources and a lot of support, but it's always, I think a lot of our grantees always have to go ahead and reflect, like, why am I in this program? What's the reason why I decided to join? So we wanted to go ahead and take a little bit of time to go ahead and find that from you and do a quick little poll and figure out your why. So go ahead, Angela. And you should be seeing the poll on your screen right now, and then you can go ahead and is it a ranking type of poll, Angela? Go ahead.
Yes, hopefully this is set up so that you can drag and drop things in order of, I think all of these apply to most of us or most Preschool Promise grantees, so you can kind of drag and drop what you see as the most highest priority to to lowest priority, or if you have something that you want to add to the chat, please feel free. Just give it one more minute. I just want to acknowledge, we do see the questions in the chat, and we're going to do our best to get through this so we can get to some of those if we don't answer them in the presentation.
I think on our end, the way the poll came out, it's a little funky, but just it's an opportunity to think about your why, and maybe in the chat you might want to add something, or you've worked up a quick puppet show. Maybe Terry was messaging me that she had a puppet show ready to go. I don't know if that's really true. I don't really know Terry, but I was just picking on her because she was right there. Do you have the puppet show, Terry? Maybe later.
Sorry, that's not turning out on your end. I will click end and we'll look at what we have. So it looks, knowing that maybe we have some, some faulty results based off of my limited poll creation capabilities. It looks like a huge priority for everyone here is a belief in, or a why for a lot of people here is a belief in investing in young children and how that benefits all of us, filling a need in community, elevating equity and inclusion and in early learning, and being able to pay staff as the professionals they are. So thank you, really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Alrighty, well, we can
get back to our presentation. Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay. Alrighty, next slide. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things that you as a new grantee should probably be working on right now. So I know that the number one question that we're getting right now is where's that grant agreement for signature, right? So right now, we're looking to go ahead and we have a lot of grantees coming for 22-23 program year. I think in total it's going to be 243 grantees across the state. So we're doing our amendments and our grant agreements kind of in waves. So right now we're kind of finalizing our grant amendments, then we're going to go ahead and move on to our grant agreements. And we're working with our procurement office to go ahead and get those out to you as soon as possible. One of the biggest things, and I'll go ahead and cover that in a little bit, is going to be insurance. So the remaining of the presentation, we're going to go ahead and talk about some of those pieces about when are my funds available? How do I get paid? What are the insurance limits? What kind of reporting? What is the reporting requiring? Who do I connect with? There's so many different resources. Who do I call and for what? So let me go ahead and turn it over to Meredith with our grants and ops team, who's going to go ahead and talk to us a little bit about the fiscal side of Preschool Promise.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So the first thing that everybody needs to make sure that they have accomplished is getting set up to receive payments from the state. So if you've never received state funding or been a grant recipient, you will need to set up access to what we call EGMS, which is the Electronic Grants Management System. And that's where you will request funding. So really important, you can start this process now before you have your agreement or amendment. I guess if it was an amendment, you'd already be set up. So make sure, well, we can put the link in the chat, but you'll submit your EGMS access request form, and then you'll submit a copy of your W-9 to the email address listed there, Connie Flowers. And if you want direct deposit, there's an additional process that you'll have to go through with submitting an authorization form. And then when you submit that EGMS access request form, it asks you a variety of questions. So on the back end, if anybody has questions, they'll reach out to you directly if they need more information to help you get set up in the system. So, and then I highly recommend that you look at the EGMS external user guide, which we will also share a link to. And then our PSP YouTube channel has some videos that walk you through how to actually submit a claim when you're ready to do so. Next slide. So as soon as you have an executed agreement or amendment, so it's executed when both parties, both you, the grantee, and the state have signed, you have 30 days to submit your budget. And your budget is going to cover your 22-23 preschool promise funds. We don't want you to include other funding source. A lot of you might have private pay or other sources of income, but your budget will just cover your preschool promise funds. And you have to submit it using the template that we provide. So I will also put this fiscal document in the chat, and it has links to everything. So you can just save that locally. And your budget is just your plan for the year. So we understand that at the end of the year, it's not necessarily going to match one-to-one. But if you do have changes to your budget that exceed $25,000 or 10% of a line item, we do ask that you request approval before April 30th. So then if you want to purchase any capital purchases in excess of $5,000, we do require pre-approval. So you would just submit an email to the Preschool Promise inbox outlining the expense that you're looking to purchase, the benefit, the timeline for installation, and all of that. Next slide. Payment process. So there are 3 main steps to the payment process. So what we call a draw report, which is where you report your expenses for the reporting period. The claims calculator, which when we were talking about EGMS, so in the EGMS system, you will have 2 separate subgrants. It's a little confusing until you see it, but you'll have one that's called General Fund and one that's called Student Success Act. And they're 2 different types of state funds. And so Preschool Promise grantees receive both of those. So in your claiming, you'll have to submit a claim against each of those for each reporting period. And we can help walk anybody through if it seems confusing, but yeah, you submit your draw report where you're either determining or forecasting your expenses. You can do that on a quarterly basis as a reimbursement method, or you can do that on a monthly basis as a reimbursement or as a forecast for the current month. So if you wanted to submit a report on October 1st for your October forecasted expenses, you could do that. And then the 3rd step is submitting those claims in EGMS. So I think that's everything about payments for now.
Thank you, Meredith. So with our reporting with Preschool Promise, we have several different reports. So one of the things where you can go ahead and refer to is like when you are looking at your grant agreement, when you receive it, you're going to go ahead and see a list of reports. And then through our communication with you, we also go ahead and provide you with different tools to go ahead and keep track of your reports. We have like a grantee and site profile. So we need to go ahead and collect information from you about your site. You provided information about your site and your RFA as far as like the address and where you're going to be located. But now we're going to be asking a little bit more in-depth information as far as like what curriculum are you going to be using? What kind of assessment are you going to be using? What's the start, the end date, your schedule hours, and some of those programmatic pieces. So stay tuned for that. Right now, you don't need to worry about any of this reporting. This is just more for like informational purposes for you to go ahead and be aware of, and then also plan as you're planning your program year. Just kind of keep in mind on that. We also have, your draw reports, and that's some of the information that Meredith was talking about. So I won't go into detail on that. We also have a monthly enrollment report. We want to know you were awarded a certain amount of slots. We need to go ahead and know information about how many of those slots are full. And like I said, this information, super informational right now, nothing that you need to worry about right now. But this is just for you to go ahead and see that there's some reporting requirements with your Preschool Promise grant. As far as like, there's also some quarterly reports, program updates is what we call them, where we're really looking at kind of getting a little bit more in depth as far as like, hey, how are conferences going? Have we completed assessments? Have we completed conferences? How's attendance going? So it's really diving into that service that our kiddos are receiving in your programs. Then at the end of the year, we have what we call an end of the year report. This is a cumulative report for the entire year. And that's really focused on how many children do you serve in total, what's their ethnicities, their age group, and so on. Just be aware, like with our program, we really try to provide as much assistance as we can. Whenever we send out any of our Gov deliveries, like we provide you with a PDF that gives you instructions of what we're looking for. And then we also have a YouTube channel that Angela will go ahead and talk to us a little bit more about, where you can go ahead and we know that some of you may want to see it, and most people go to YouTube to go ahead and see tutorials about stuff. So we created our own YouTube channel here for Preschool Promise. There's also some other pieces with the Preschool Promise. If at any time we need to, we may have an opportunity with your program, and then we need to, put your program in a corrective action plan. We also have some forms that you'll need to go ahead and fill out for that. And then Michael touched a little bit about that TA agreement. That's done through our child care resource and referral. So this just gives you kind of at a glance the different reporting. So just kind of think about just some of that planning of how, one thing to go ahead and keep in mind is that with Preschool Promise, if reports are not submitted by the due date, that may delay your payment. So just kind of keep that in mind. But as we move forward, here we are to go and provide you some technical assistance with that. Next slide. So let's talk about insurance. So most of you last week should have received an email requesting the insurance. One of the biggest things out of everything that we cover that would cause some delays in your grant agreement getting executed is going to be meeting the insurance limits for Preschool Promise. We have made some changes over the years to our insurance. We highly recommend that you, if you remember when you applied for the RFA on our website, and we'll probably go ahead and add the link here, it shows you like the sample grant agreement. And then within that sample grant agreement, one of the exhibits is the actual like insurance requirements. That's a nice handy tool that you can go ahead and show your insurance agent and say, hey, this is the insurance requirements that I need to meet for Preschool Promise. So last week, you should have all received an email where you'll need to go ahead and submit what we call the certificate of insurance, which is a certificate that shows us all of the levels. You need to go ahead and mention the state of Oregon as an additional insurer. So there's certain requirements. I'll go ahead and put a plug here at this. We're going to be sharing this slide deck with you, and you'll have all the links. So you'll be able to go ahead and see, it looks like we already have it here, like a link to the sample grant agreement. And then there's also like an example of the certificate of insurance. We at the ELD are not able to refer you to any insurance agents. That's not something that we can do, but you definitely can go ahead and connect with other Preschool Promise grantees or the child care resource and referral for assistance on that. We're really just focused on like, here's the limits, and here's, you need to go ahead and meet that before us being able to go ahead and fully execute the agreement. Next slide. And actually, before we go into communications, if we can go back to the insurance situation there. I believe that there were some questions on the chat message about placement of children. When we're talking about our early learning hubs, as new grantees, you're definitely welcome to go ahead and like connect families to the hub so they can go ahead and start talking to families about Preschool Promise and determining whether they're eligible or not. One thing to go ahead and like, two super important things to go ahead and keep in mind. One is when we're looking at the big system of coordinated enrollment, when a family is getting referred to the hub, we really want to go ahead and elevate the parent choice. So the hub will go ahead and tell the family about all of the other programs available in community for them and their options for them. So you may have a family that they may have learned about a program and maybe they're needing transportation, or maybe they're needing a different services. So the hub is tasked with really ensuring that the family knows about all the options and community. So that's one thing to go ahead and keep in mind. We received some feedback about like, I sent a family to the hub and they got placed somewhere else. Why did that happen? The reason why that happens is really because the hub is there to go ahead and share about like all the options and community, and then the family makes a decision whether they want to be placed at that program or a different program. They may decide not to even stay with Preschool Promise and go through a different program. So that's one thing to go ahead and keep in mind. The other thing is, you as new grantees, as we've gone over, there's different things that you'll need to go ahead and complete to be able to successfully get to a fully executed grant agreement, right? We have your EGAMs that needs to get set out. We have the insurance that needs to be met. Early learning hubs have been told, well, they can definitely help families check for eligibility. They at this point cannot place any child like in your program as Preschool Promise. So that's one thing to go ahead and know, that it's like they cannot place a child under the Preschool Promise funding until we have informed them like, yes, Jen has a fully executed, grant agreement and we're good to go. So that's one thing to know. Just go ahead and keep checking on that. We're in constant communication with our early learning hubs. And the reason for that is because there's several different steps that we need to go ahead and complete to get you set up in the system. And one of them, is going to go ahead and be the insurance. We'll need to go ahead and make sure that the insurance limits are met, as well as other limits. So now I'm going to turn it over to Angela here to talk to us about communication.
Thanks, Dana. And shout out for muscling through that. I know your kids brought you home a cold from school, so good job. Communication. So I'm going to try and speed through this a little bit and not do my best job at communication so that we can get to your questions. But we are a large grant program. I just want to acknowledge that out the gate. We grant directly with providers, and that means that we have a large group of people that we communicate with on a regular basis, and especially right now during fall rush, which is always busy, and post RFA with everybody being new, and then our continuing providers trying to get their agreements out the door and going. So we have a lot of communication going right now. It is our busiest time. So if you have had a delay in getting an answer back, I sincerely apologize. And we're working on clearing out that backlog soon. But we have a lot of strategies that we try to use to communicate effectively. The first is the Preschool Promise Bulletin. You'll hear it sometimes references Gov Delivery. That's just the platform that we use. It has updates, reminders, report links, resources, other important information. The Preschool Promise SharePoint site, which I'll look at quickly with you in the next slide, but it's a closed site for grantees and community partners. It includes prior bulletins, report links, other resources. We partner with Oregon Department of Education's IT staff to get people access to that site. So it is less than streamlined, to be honest. It's because it has security measures involved. So usually what happens is we do a big upload at the start of the year. As you get staff, if you have staff turnover, you have add new people onto your team, you can email us put something like SharePoint in the subject line, and then we try and consolidate that into a list on a weekly or every other week basis, get it to the ODEIT staff so they can send out those invitations to you. We have the Preschool Promise YouTube channel. We record all of our meetings, not one-on-one meetings, but all of our public meetings, and post those on our YouTube channel. We post how-to videos and report tutorials. We have our Preschool Promise inbox, which is our primary method of communicating with you. It's psp@ode.oregon.gov. Like I said, we're experiencing a really large volume of emails right now, but a typical response is 2 to 3 business days. And then we also schedule virtual meetings and phone calls. So if there's a matter that you really need to take some time to be in conversation with us, just ask that you reach out and we'll schedule a meeting with you as soon as possible. Something that we are going to work toward this year is implementing office hours. So that will be something where we have set time every week where you're able to schedule on your own, just like book 30 minutes with us on the spot. SharePoint, we'll jump over there and hopefully my screen share is jumping with me. Let's see, Dana, is it taking us to SharePoint? Okay, great. So if you haven't seen it yet, this is what the Preschool Promise SharePoint site looks like. All of our new grantees should have received an invitation to the email that you used to apply on September 20th. We did provide a huge list to ODEIT. So if you didn't get that, check your spam folder. It's a Oregon Department of Ed sender. The phrasing is something like is inviting you to a shared platform or something along those lines. If you didn't get it, send us an email, put SharePoint in the subject line, and we'll get that going for you as soon as possible. So like I mentioned, we have access to some links, the grant manual in English and Spanish, report links, the quality requirements playbook. The updates is a log of every bulletin that we've sent out over the past several months. So if you missed one, you can kind of go back and reference it. And then we have several tools listed here too. So that claims calculator that Meredith mentioned, things like that. So attendance calculator, if you're trying to figure that out, that could be helpful as well. So a few other tools there. So I'm gonna go back to our meeting. I know this is a ton of information, so I just want to remind everybody that you don't have to be an expert today. We know we're just starting out and it feels like a lot at first, but it gets easier. You're gonna get there. So don't stress if it's not all clicking for you immediately. We appreciate you so much. We see Preschool Promise early learning and care providers as leaders in the field and champions for young children. So sincerely appreciate you being here. Dana, how's your voice doing? Can I pull up a few questions in the chat?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for your patience there. It's been a rough. Just to go ahead and add a little bit, and you'll probably hear me saying, 'cause I think it's really important. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the insurance again. Super important to go ahead and get that in. As far as the timeline, I saw a little chat message that said, hey, what's the timeline to go ahead and get this new agreements out? Because we want to get ready. We want to go ahead and start serving children. We're looking to go ahead and get this sent out. We're hoping by next week. Go ahead and get those grant agreements out so that the sooner that you get through the insurance and that collaboration, it's going to go ahead and be like super important. If your like contact information has changed, please notify us right away, because that's the other thing. Even with our current grantees, like if we send something and then it's like I haven't received it, sometimes it's because we have not we don't have like your like most up-to-date information. So yes, like I said, go back, once we send out the slide deck here, and go back like, okay, have I completed my EGAMs? Am I set up as a vendor? Make sure that you complete those steps. Have I sent my insurance certificates? So then you're ready to really reach the full execution of the agreement. There was also mention as far as like the start date for all new grantees, including those who were able to get expansion, is by no later than October 30th. is being able to go ahead and like receive children into the program. We understand that because of the delay, there's going to be like, you may need to go ahead and adjust your hours. One thing, I think there's may have been a little bit of confusion with Preschool Promise. That Preschool Promise model is no less than 4 days a week, no less than 6 hours a day. That doesn't mean that you cannot offer 5 days a week, 5 days a week, or more than 6 hours a day. So I think like that's going to be the opportunity. And the program, you know, needs to end no later than June the 30th. So I think that that will be like the expectation from for our grantees, existing and new, is to be able to go ahead and take a look at those hours. I mean, we understand that families have been waiting, and you know, our commitment to them is to go ahead and provide them with no less than 900 hours of direct services to them. So, you know, we'll go ahead and work with you as far as the reporting and some of those pieces, try to go ahead and get the funding out. So just know that we're here to go ahead and help you and support you. And I cannot stress enough for you coming on board with us, this very like just transactional pieces that we need to go ahead and get through so you can reach full execution of that of the grant agreement there. Thank you. And I want to be super respectful of your time and your families. You know, I mean, shout out to your families, because I know that they also play a big role in your success and you becoming a Preschool Promise grantee, and the support that they give you, your kiddos, your spouses, your significant others. So I want to be respectful of time. Make sure you make it to dinner on time. Just a reminder, with our Preschool Promise meetings, we always have the 2 meetings, the one in English and the one in Spanish, and then you join whichever language you prefer. And then just stay tuned for the month of October. For those who are new, is that we always do a bilingual kickoff meeting, and that bilingual kickoff is where we're going to be bringing all our current grantees and new grantees into one meeting. So just stay tuned on that. If you are not getting our Gov Deliver emails, please send an email so we can make sure we're sending them on a weekly basis, because there is a lot of information going out. For any questions that we did not get to today, stay tuned. We'll be adding those to the FAQ document that we've been sharing. But thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.